Peace to all of the kings and queens out there. It is your brother M to the O, 13th letter to the cipher. Once again, back at you this morning. Yes, this morning, doing work, putting work in, putting work in, putting work in, family. Now, if you all have not watched Black History 36, I highly recommend that you watch that video. Why do I recommend that you watch that video? Basically, because it's a test. It's the test to see how smart you are or where your mental capacity is at this time. Whether you, it basically tells you if you are a free man or if you are still a slave or brainwashed or maladjusted or just plain jacked. Okay. But how you all doing this morning? Okay. How you all doing this morning? Me here. It's been a beautiful day today. Sun was out, you know, and I hope you all are still continuing your goal or reaching your goal in regards to uplifting yourself, uplifting those around you, teaching your children, teaching your neighbor, teaching yourself. See, these are the conversations that we need to have with one another. We need to have interactions like this, you know, intellectual conversions, conversations, um, talking about where we want to go as a whole, as a people, not as an individual. That's our problem right now. We have become individualistic versus being a whole or a family, so to say. And the other day, excuse me, I got some news today in regards to the APB that I put out on the 2-year-old Neilani Robinson. Well, the news is that the 2-year-old was found dead. She was found dead in a van that was in the ditch, and she was wrapped up in some form of quilt or comfort. And she was found in Austin, Minnesota. That's right. Sadly for the young goddess, never truly lived her life, got it snuffed out by her father, who practices self annihilation. That's right, her own dad killed her, kidnapped her, excuse me, killed her mother, shot the mother's sister, then end up kidnapping the baby, and she was found dead. We don't know if he actually killed her, but we do know that he was involved in kidnapping her because he did it himself. Okay. Um, so let's give a moment of silence for Neilani Robinson, please. Thank you all. You know what, family? I've been doing some research, and I tell you, if you live in the Chicago area and you are out there sticking your rod in everything, if you are a black male in Chicago and you are out there sticking your rod in everything, I want you to pay very close attention to this news that I have for you. Based upon the research that I've done in regards to AIDS and the CDC has reported that Chicago, Illinois is number 6 on the list for contracting new AIDS. That's right. That's right. That is the latest report. When I say new AIDS, I mean people who have newly acquired AIDS, okay? Number 6 on the list. In America, Chicago, Illinois, rated number 6 for new cases of AIDS. So if you are out there and you are in the Chicago area, I'm just saying, strap up or become abstinent, or if you don't have any, and if you have a mate, stay with your mate. Stay away from the virus. UDIGG. Number 3 on the list would be I was watching this movie the other day, and it was talking about how these artists, entertainers, did a show for now Kubalan, aka Africa. Entertainers doing a show that was for the starving children in Africa. This reminded me of the Lionel Richie, the Diana Ross, the Michael Jackson, the Quincy Jones, all of those people who did We Are the World. This is number 2. This is number 2, not number 1, but number 2. Now, We Are the World was regarding people dealing with our Kubalan as well. But how is it that these entertainers were actually raising money for the number 1 world resources country in the world? They're raising money for the people who live in the number 1 resource country in the world. Why are people in our Kubalan starving? The next time you think about buying some gold, buying some diamonds, you think about all of those black people over there who are suffering working in those mines, cannot even have a diamond or have gold. You understand me? I'm just saying, how can they be starving when they are the richest continent on the planet? Who's making them starve? Who's over there in charge making them starve? And you figure out your role that you play in helping to oppress them. Think about that. I'm going to cut down my videos possibly to 30 minutes or so. Seeing that many people don't have beyond a 30-minute time span or brain span, so to say. And I know sometimes they get long-winded and whatnot, but I'm going to place it at around 30 to 35 minutes every video. But I will be giving a series on what I'm talking about now, which is Black education. This is Black education part 1. And once again, I'm an educator, so that's what I do. Because being educated in this present school system alienates you to serve aliens. Did you hear me? Being educated by this present school system alienates you to serve aliens and not your own self. Being educated in this system requires you to lose your own self-worth, your own self-identity, and to acquire another people's outlook or perspective, which consequently makes you a Caucasian in melanated skin. I want you to think about that again. And I'm going to say it again. Being educated in this system often requires you to lose your own self-worth, your own self-identity, and makes you acquire another people's outlook or perspective, which consequently makes you a Caucasian in melanated skin, in self-hate and self-annihilation. You think about that. Even today, after so-called integration success, seeing that we all are supposed to be integrated, it's still not integrated because in this present school system, they don't teach you about yourself in this school system, nor studies or Black curriculum. In order to teach Black children one must have a knowledge of the psychology development of that child. Have the psychology development and understand the psychology development of that child. One of the reasons why our children are miseducated is because of the approach that is used by the educators, not understanding the psychology of the Black child. The approach that is being used is from the psychological standpoint of the European child, even though the current generation might not think, or shall I say, even the current generation have been involved in slavery, but the the experiences that Black folks have had in this country and this tragic experience, I want to say, of Black people being in this country is somewhat encoded in their DNA. So what I'm saying to you, that even though you have all of these young people in this generation who have no idea of what slavery feels like, they have that experience from their ancestors in their genes. Meaning, even from the Willie Lynch syndrome, that fear that was instilled inside of the mother, even though she was impregnated or not impregnated, still affected that child, and she taught it to that child. If fear was in her while she was impregnated, that fear continues and continues and also reaches the fetus where the child is in. And if the child is born and she instills this mechanism of survival being soft, meaning being mentally nimble and physically strong in order to save himself or herself from the grips and the atrocities of white America. That's real talk. Therefore, by in this present day generation, um, they can't escape the heritage of it. It is a part of their psychology. And when we ignore that history, even being on the brink of self destruction, not realizing that that history, we can learn about the cohesiveness and value system that slaves had for one another. And you may ask, well, what value system or cohesiveness was that? 13th letter to the cipher. Well, I will tell you this, they had common sense to run. They had common sense to run, even though they were being stripped of their common sense. They had common sense enough to run, to be a runaway slave and risk being caught, risk being hung, risk being beaten, because they knew that there was no way that that was a way to live under the hand of some European. Now, what common sense do we have today? And as I mentioned in earlier videos, when we were in Black History Month, I was expounding upon the greatness and the advances that Black slaves had done for white America, so that you can get an idea of your greatness. Common sense, that which we have been robbed of as a slave, okay, and robbed of as a free slave, so-called free slave today, and robbed of your self-intelligence. And the rulers of the world know this. The rulers of the world know this, and they are the ones who actually placed you in this hellish condition. You understand? And they know that. They know that you will not go for yourself, for the benefit of yourself, because you were educated by them. Now you think about that. When we look at the psychology of the Black child versus the white child, they are different. We mentally develop faster than white children. Now, I'm not being biased and don't have any argument with me. Argue with the white doctors and white scientists who put the information out there. Only thing you have to do is do your research. All of this stuff was performed by white people. Okay. You know, we don't have no statistics. Okay. Now, see, this young black child, you're talking about children who represents the origin of all people who live on this earth versus the other one, which is the European child who represents racism and distortion of truth. Now, if you think I'm lying, why do you have these white students in white school districts who call black people animals, call them niggers, and have racial cliches and images written on school property about black people? If I'm wrong. In addition to that, you have white adults who have nooses, swastikas, burnt crosses in their place of employment. Do you hear me? In their place of, now these are the very same parents of the white children you see today. So you think about that before you say that I'm wrong. Consequently, after being miseducated by white female educators, their white police husbands lock them up. School to prison pipeline system. Do you understand that at all? Please tell me that you do. Because if you don't, we are sadly in trouble. Think about that. You have white teachers who teach black children, and then their white police husbands lock them up. And you all still don't understand that. But once you understand that, you can understand your greatness versus being in servitude. Then we can have a chance of turning this thing around, being miseducated, into something positive. But in order to do this, we need the help of parents who are willing to learn and educate themselves about themselves, because that is the base of your psychology, which innately affects your outlook or your perspective. Did you get that? In order to properly educate a black child, one must understand the psychology of that child, the history of that child, and the experience of that people. Sadly, we send our children to educators who don't understand that. And really, to tell you the truth, they don't care about black children's psychology. They don't care about the history of that child in order to educate him properly. And apparently, neither do you. If you don't understand the history of a people, you don't understand the psychology of that people. And when you're not when you're not qualified with what I just spoke about, being qualified to educate the psychology of a black person or a black child, you consequently miseducate the very student that you are so-called educating, which leads to a distortion in their history, a distortion in their mental capacity, and furthermore and lastly, a distortion of them as a people. From school to prison pipeline. And after distorting the child's psychology, after distorting that black child's psychology, they say that your child is not functioning at whatever level, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, then they get labeled. Then they're called deficient. They are called deficient, who need some remedial attention or some remedial courses. And you, with your foolish self, believe the teacher simply because you're not academically preparing your child after you send them to school to be miseducated by white educators. You think about that. Your open-eyed enemy is now and is educating your children. Think about that. Think about how many white women called the popo on little black children last summer for selling water, for cutting grass, or whatever they were doing to generate them some form of income during those hot days. White people called the popo on little black kids. And I'm sure you all seen that time after time after time after time all through last summer. But these are the very same white educators that you send your children to school to be educated by. That's all I'm saying with your educated ass. You have to get rid of the cliche meaning equal education because there's nothing about it. That is an empty term or empty cliche that has no meaning. None whatsoever. They are going to misguide your children and miseducate your children the same way they miseducated you. And you don't see nothing wrong with that. You think about that. Who told you that your child must learn at the same time as Billy Blowjob, or White Bill over there? Now you say that white person and a black kid and a white kid in the same class learning the same thing at the same time, given the same amount of minutes. But what you don't understand is the psyche of that student, of both students. You think about what goes on in black communities, in black neighborhoods, in black apartments, in black homes. You think about the psychology that black child has to go through versus the psychology of the white child. You think about that. And number two, just think about it. The white child, more than likely, his mom or dad is a teacher, or he has an uncle or aunt that's a teacher. You think about that. He doesn't have to deal with looking outside his door, seeing drugs. He don't have to go outside worrying about if he's going to come home or not, because some silly black men are out there shooting at one another. I'm just saying. You think about that. But you don't see anything wrong with your child being miseducated the same way you have been. And you are expecting a different result from them. Why do you submit yourself or submit your children to standardized tests? Who told you that if your child doesn't learn at the rate that the little white boy does, that your child is deficient? Who told you that? That's not true. What is sixth grade math? What is seventh grade math? What is first or third grade reading? Are you serious? You can't do that realistically on a psychological level. On a psychology level, you can't do that because everybody is operating at a different mental rate, and they're dealing with different emotions, different challenges of being a child in whatever neighborhood or community that they're in. These white teachers are not some God sent teachers interests at hand. Please, by all means, don't tell me that you are that foolish to believe that. You cannot believe that. Please don't tell me you believe that. Our children have inherited a racist, our children inherited a racist school system, and you as parents have to accept some form of responsibility for that. A good example would be, or shall I say, a good question would be, how many of you discuss what your child learned in school, especially in the subjects of history and reading? How many of you all actually sit down and discuss what your child has learned during that day while you sent them to school? If you place junk in a child's head, that's what you're going to get out of that child. The evidence of this is seen when you open your door and you live in a hood. When you open your door and you live in a hood, what do you see? Do you see the example? Do you see the school prison pipeline system? Good. Let that be the reason and your motivation for wanting to educate your child. You think about that before you send them to school to be miseducated. It is pertinent that you make time for that. It's absolutely pertinent that you make time for that because our future depends on you. Our future depends on us as a whole educating these kids. And if we don't educate them, guess what happens? The street ends up educating them. In a sense, some children today have more sense than their parents have. And the reason that I say that is because they know that something is wrong fundamentally, but they can't articulate it or pinpoint it. But they know that something is wrong. And their resistance comes out, and you're not understanding that resistance coming out, so you pacify them with video games, iPads, overpriced shoes and clothes, making them look and feel successful on the outside when there's nothing on the inside, like a box of rocks. On the inside, nothing upstairs. They walk around with the, up-to-date Nike Air Jordans and all of the new jeans and all of the new belts and all of the new coats and clothing and jewelry, but they don't have no sense. None. And you're not teaching them any sense. You're not teaching them that they've been robbed of their common sense because you have been robbed of your common sense. I'm just saying. If you think that they are out of control now, you just keep on doing what you're doing and you will see the disservice that you have done because they will rise up against you and curse you for leading them and leaving them in this hellish state. But you don't see that with your foolish self. You think that it's all good and dandy. And after we leave them in this hellish state, we already see that they are viewed as criminals. Like I say, you can be broke and you labeled as a criminal nowadays because most of the poor people are in jail. You don't see rich people in jail. You don't see rich people doing, you know what I'm saying? Most of your prisons and jails that are filled up in the US are filled up by poor people. It's almost a crime to be poor. So if you're poor and black, You get the picture? Speaking of criminals, I was having a conversation with this white guy, and we were having intellectual discussion, intellectual debates, and we were talking about history. And he said, Mo, despite all of that, what you're saying, which is true and it does have some validity, but you must admit, Mo, that most of the crimes committed today are committed by black men. And I say, hold up. First of all, who defines the word crime? Let's understand that. See, when you understand the word game and when you understand history, you can easily get over the bullshit. Okay? And after I asked him, well, you talking about black people having committed the bulk of crime. Well, who defines crime? And he had to Now, why did white people decriminalize themselves with the crimes that they committed and made black people criminals? Well, what do you mean? Well, what do I mean is white folks, when they came over here as immigrants, okay, when white folks came over here as immigrants, what did they do? They murdered, they robbed, they raped, they stole, robbed, raped, murdered, stole, hung, burned, lynched, slaved, enslaved people, you name it, white folks did it. But they didn't go to jail for that. They didn't go to prison for that either. But isn't that a crime? Isn't that a crime? So how could you tell me that black people commit the bulk of crime when you have not convicted your own self for the crimes that you've committed or that your people have committed and are continuing to commit? It's sad that a white person has to make you a criminal to feel good about themselves. And I left him with that. Left him speechless. Actually, left him speechless. They didn't even get arrested. So who's the real criminal? And as I say, I walked away, leaving him speechless. That's how you do that. You cannot be afraid to talk to white people and tell them what's on your mind, because many white people don't expect for you to tell them what's on your heart. You know, the old slave master and slave mentality relationship type thing. But many white people see you as criminal to make themselves feel better about their own guilt. Word. That's real talk. If you are looking to help in this voyage, if you are willing to help in this voyage, there are vast openings for black educators. There's a vast opening for black educators, opportunities all across America, so that we can turn this thing around. Let me ask you a question. How many black educators do you see in an all-white school district? Well, I'm one of them, but I also teach in black school districts. So I'm in both areas, but how many do you really see in your black school district? How many white teachers do you see? And how many white teachers do you see in the black school districts? And how many black teachers do you see in white school districts? If you are a black woman or a black man and you have a work permit, meaning a degree that is not in the field of education or in the field of education, and you are looking for employment, um, a substitute position is a great start if you don't have an education degree. If you do have an education degree and you're Black, more than likely you're already teaching somewhere. But I'm here to tell you that we need you. We need you. The system is full. The system is absolutely full of uh, uh, full of interest, or they're scrambling, so to say. That's what I'm trying to say. The school system is actually scrambling for teachers all across America. The decisions that we make today affects our children tomorrow. You think about that. What role do you play in advancing or the upliftment for your people, especially if you have the knowledge and will to do so? You think about that. We're going to get to a part 2 tomorrow or after a couple of days. And by all means, I want you to go back and watch Black History 36 and take a test on yourself. Don't be offended. Just take a test for yourself and see if you pass or not. I highly encourage you to do so. Black History 36, which was the video right before this one. And if there's anything that I have said that you liked, that you can apply to your life or give away to friends or neighbors that can uplift them, please, by all means, press the subscribe button and press the like button. I would really appreciate that, family. If there's anything that I've said in this video that you like and can use and apply it in your life or in your children's life or in your neighbor's life, please, by all means, press the subscribe button. Okay? I want to leave you with this. As always, stay away from the po-po. Don't drink and drive. Have some love, respect, and honor for yourself. And by all means, educate your child after you sent them to school to be miseducated.